Has also visited Somalia, where at least 8 Somalis were killed Sunday after a suicide bomber rammed his car into a government convoy carrying a delegation from Qatar. The Al-Qaeda-linked militant group Al-Shabaab has claimed responsibility for the Sunday's attack in Mogadishu Central Kilometer 4 Road Junction. Officials say the Qataris who were traveling in the Interior Minister's convoy were not hurt and proceeded on to their hotel. But many bystanders were wounded. Despite losing much of their stronghold to African and Somali government forces, Al-Shabaab continues to carry out periodic attacks in Mogadishu. Now, the attack occurred 2 days before a conference in London to rally international support for Somalia. Let's go to Ndimiake Mwakalieli with the side of that side of the story. Ndimi?
Thank you very much, Vincent. Somali President Hassan Sheikh Mohamud and British Prime Minister David Cameron are chairing a conference in London Tuesday on Somalia. This will be the second such conference, drawing high-level officials from organizations from about 50 countries, including the United Nations, the African Union, and the International Monetary Fund, all aimed at helping to rebuild the country. The government of Somalia is seeking foreign assistance to help reform the country's security, finance and judicial sectors, as well as foster reconciliation. Mohammed Hassan of VOA Somali Service says conference participants are likely to assist Somalia, given improvements since the election of President Mohamud last year.
Many countries have appointed ambassadors to Somalia, and the government has shown that it's willing to do something about what has been described as corrupt administrations in the past. The government has appointed a new central bank manager. They have made change to the military leadership. They have approached many Somalis living in the diaspora who have the expertise to do in the institutions that the government wants to build. So I believe the government has built some confidence, but they have still some work to do in terms of reconciliation. Many people say they have focused more on the international arena rather than the local. So after this conference, the responsibility will be huge on the government to reach out to different local administrations that might not be now so happy with how the government is approaching them.
Mohammed Hassan is a reporter in VOA Somali Service. Now we are joined via Skype from Nairobi by Gabe Josolo, who's been following developments in Somalia. Thanks for joining us, Gabe.
Thank you.
I want to start off with, just before you comment a little bit on what Hassan said, the bombing that happened in Mogadishu yesterday. Obviously, security is a top priority for the Somali government. What can be expected now that it's been highlighted that insecurity is still a major issue there?
Yeah, I think the bombing yesterday did highlight that security challenges do remain. As you mentioned before, this is the second Somali conference that's been organized and hosted in London. And since then, there has been progress, but the Somali National Army, for instance, is still in need of equipment. They still need to train troops and strengthen their reach. The police force is still incredibly weak, and Al-Shabaab militants who are responsible or claimed responsibility for Sunday's attack still control large areas of southern Somalia. So there's quite a lot of work to be done.
Now, on the issue that Hassan raised, and that has to do with the internal affairs of the country, this is the issue of reconciliation and building civil society. What do you think can be expected to come out of this conference on that particular front?
Well, there's a lot of goodwill going into this conference, particularly between civil society and the various actors within Somalia. But I think one point that highlights the remaining challenges is the fact that Somaliland will not be attending. This is the autonomous region in the north of Somalia, which is functionally independent from the rest of the federally governed parts of Somalia. They are in negotiations with the government right now seeking political reconciliation, but they're refusing and boycotting this conference as they did the last one. Because they want to be seen and recognized as an independent state. And there are other states that are forming in Somalia, including Jubaland and the Galmudug state, that also present these problems. So while there is a lot of hope for this kind of conference, there are huge problems with political reconciliation still remaining within the country.
Of course, and also we mentioned how there are many representatives from about 50 countries, including the president of Kenya, who is just, in fact, he's already arrived. Tell us what he's hoping to contribute to this discussion.
Yeah, that's quite an interesting development, actually. I mean, Uhuru Kenyatta has made Somalia one of his his foreign policy priorities since taking office. But this visit to London is complicated by the fact that he is facing charges at the International Criminal Court. And we've heard reports that he is planning to meet with David Cameron. And if you remember, the British government had warned during the Kenyan elections, they'd warned voters that if Uhuru Kenyatta and his deputy, who is also facing charges, were elected, then the government would have to keep them at an arm's length, would have to limit them to essential contact. So now that we have these reports that they're going to meet in London, it kind of proves Uhuru Kenyatta's point that London may have been bluffing all along, and that actually the consequences weren't so dire. So it's a really interesting development.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Gabe Joselo, for tying all that together for us.